In our last briefing, we analyzed the mathematics behind the USS Abraham Lincoln's emergency sprint to the Persian Gulf. We explained why the Pentagon made the cold calculation to pull 100,000 tons of nuclear firepower out of the Pacific to answer a crisis in the Middle East. But that maneuver leaves a terrifying variable in the equation: the void. With the Lincoln gone, the South China Sea appears defenseless. On tactical displays in the East, analysts see a power vacuum. They see the withdrawal of the ultimate deterrent. They look at the map, and they are preparing to fill it. But they made a fatal calculation error. The United States Navy is not retreating. We are just switching calibers. Emerging from the fog to fill that void is the USS Tripoli, LHA-7. Look closely. To the untrained eye, this looks like a desperate downgrade. It has no nuclear reactor. It has no steam catapults. It is half the size of the giant it replaces. But look deeper. Engineers gutted the traditional well deck. They sacrificed 2/3 of the hospital facilities. Why? To strip away the fat and turn an amphibious ship into a purebred lightning carrier. If you want to understand how American engineering turns a tactical gap into a strategic trap, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss the math on this one. This isn't a retreat, it is an evolution. The Lincoln was the sledgehammer, powerful but obvious. The Tripoli is the switchblade, concealed, agile, and lethal at close range. But how does a ship with no catapults hold the line against a superpower? And why does its secret weapon cost $147 million for a single unit? If you think tonnage is the only metric that matters in modern war, you are about to lose the argument. Today, we decode the trap. The Lincoln cleared the lane. The Tripoli is bringing the pain. This is the story of the lightning swap. This is Navy Decoded. To understand why the Pentagon dared to pull a Nimitz-class carrier from the most contested waters on Earth, you have to ignore the politics. You have to look at the physics. And the physics of 2026 are dictated by two variables: the mission and the threat. First, let's talk about the mission. While the Pacific was quiet, the Persian Gulf was not. Intelligence confirms that tensions in the Middle East have escalated beyond diplomatic containment. Ballistic missile forces are mobilizing. The Straits of Hormuz are threatened. The Navy looked at the chessboard and realized they had a geometry problem. To strike targets deep inside hostile territory requires range. It requires the F-35C Lightning II, the C variant, the carrier variant, big wings, massive fuel tanks, a combat radius of over 600 nautical miles. The Abraham Lincoln was the only asset in the region equipped with Squadron 9 and these specific, long-range stealth fighters. She wasn't just available, she was engineered for that exact fight. So the order was given. Lincoln had to go. But that brings us to the second variable, the threat. Why leave the Pacific now? Why leave our allies exposed to the great power in the East? Here is the uncomfortable truth that military planners know, but rarely say out loud. In the confined waters of the first island chain, a supercarrier is not just a weapon, it is a target. Our competitors have spent 20 years building a specific type of weapon: anti-ship ballistic missiles, hypersonic carrier killers. These weapons create a kill box that extends 2,000 miles from their coastline. Keeping a 100,000-ton ship carrying 5,000 American lives parked inside that static kill zone isn't bravery. It is a strategic liability. It is a target too big to hide and too expensive to lose. So when Lincoln turned west, she wasn't retreating. She was stepping out of the sniper's scope. She is clearing the lane for a different kind of predator. This is where the genius of American engineering steps in. If the enemy is training to kill a giant, you do not send them another giant. You send them a swarm. You send them the USS Tripoli. But here is the engineering paradox that confuses the analysts. Tripoli is an amphibious assault ship. By design, she is slower. She carries the F-35B, the Stovall variant, which is physically inferior to the Lincoln's jets in almost every metric. Shorter range, smaller bomb load, less agility. So how can this inferior ship possibly hold the line against a near-peer adversary equipped with hypersonic missiles? The answer lies in a piece of technology that costs $147 million. It isn't a missile, it isn't a laser, it is a helicopter. A helicopter that costs more than a private jet fleet, born from a development hell that lasted a decade. and it is about to turn every empty rock in the ocean into a US Navy missile base. The Lincoln took the sledgehammer to the Middle East, but she left the Tripoli behind to perform surgery. Let's run the math on the swap. To understand why the Navy dared to bet the Pacific on the USS Tripoli, do not look at it as a ship. Look at it as an engineering trade-off. The Tripoli is the second ship of the America-class Flight 0, but she represents a deviation from doctrine. Engineers at Huntington Ingalls Industries made a radical calculation. They eliminated the well deck. Gone is the floodable compartment that defined amphibious warfare for 50 years. No hovercraft, no swimming tanks. Why sacrifice such a core capability? The answer is aviation fuel. By removing the well deck, Tripoli repurposed that massive internal volume to double her capacity for JP-5 fuel. She is no longer a troop transport. She is a floating gas station, optimized for one single variable: sortie rate. But to sustain that sortie rate with the F-35B, Tripoli had to defeat a different kind of enemy: thermodynamics. When an F-35B lands vertically, the exhaust from its F-135 engine hits the deck at over 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. Standard non-skid epoxy paints fail at 500 degrees. Under the F-35B's torch, a traditional deck suffers catastrophic thermal shock. The paint peels instantly, creating debris that can destroy the engine, and the steel itself begins to warp and buckle. The solution is a technology borrowed from the aerospace industry: thermal spray non-skid. This isn't paint, it is a metallic shield. Technicians use a twin-wire arc spray system to fuse a proprietary aluminum-titanium alloy directly onto the steel deck, using a high-velocity ionized gas stream. This creates a rough metal matrix composite that doesn't just resist heat, it manages it. While standard epoxy creates a barrier that traps heat, this metallic coating dissipates the thermal load across the deck's surface, preventing structural failure. The Lincoln was a show of force. The Tripoli is a siege machine. With doubled fuel reserves and a hardened flight deck, she sends a clear message: we can keep this fire burning longer than you can hold your breath. However, no matter how advanced the deck is, it exists to serve only one master: the F-35. And this is where we must face the brutal reality of mathematics. When the Lincoln departed, she took the F-35C door kickers with her. The C variant is the heavyweight champion: big wings, deep fuel tanks, but most importantly, its internal weapon bay is over 160 inches long. It can swallow 2 GBU-31 bombs. These are 2,000-pound bunker busters designed to crush command centers buried 30 feet underground. But on the Tripoli, we have the F-35B. To achieve the miracle of vertical landing, to hover like a helicopter, engineers had to stuff a massive lift fan directly behind the pilot. This fan harnesses 29,000 shaft horsepower from the main engine. That is equivalent to 40 Formula One engines firing at once. But physics always demands payment. That fan eats up internal volume. It steals space from the fuel tank and squeezes the weapon bay. The result? Combat radius drops from 600 nautical miles to 450, and the weapon bay is shortened to exactly 140 inches. Now, do the math. A GBU-31 bunker buster is 152 inches long. The F-35B bay is 140 inches long. It is 12 inches too long. It physically does not fit. No amount of software updates can solve a geometry problem, so the F-35B is forced to carry the smaller GBU-32, 1,000 pounds, half the explosive yield, significantly less penetration power. On paper, we just swapped a sledgehammer for a dagger, but in the South China Sea, a sledgehammer is useless if you cannot swing it. Static runways are dead targets. The Lincoln is a mobile runway, but it is still a concentrated mass of steel. The F-35B changes the equation. It doesn't need a pristine ship. It can land on a bombed-out highway. It can refuel on a tiny coral atoll. The Lincoln announces, "I am here. Fear me." The Tripoli whispers, "I am everywhere. Try to find me."